Hello, my name is WBurdick. Today I want to discuss with you the possibilities and realities of sustainable stormwater. This is a teaching document that helps you as a municipality duplicate what we did in the city of Austin, such that you can take the data and dynamics of your natural and built infrastructure to drive decision-making and prioritization in your asset management plan. The expected outcomes would be to help maintain your level of service that you provide to your customers, restore ecosystem services, and maintain the economic prosperity of the city. Over the past 100 years, stormwater designs have been made to capture rainfall and move them away as quickly as possible through a series of pipes, creeks, channels, ponds, and finally to the larger receiving bodies of water. As a city, Austin maintains over 1,000 miles of storm drain. We operate, maintain, or inspect 2,100 miles of creek, and we also do the same with about 8,000 stormwater basins. As development has been changing our land use patterns, it's also been changing the hydrologic cycle. We have growing infrastructure needs, and the infrastructure currently is either extended at or getting closer to its effective end of life, and it's either aging in place faster than we can replace it, and failing in some cases, as you can see here. Intensity on land use also has water quality issues, and we have been faced with greater periods of drought and flooding, which all have an impact on our infrastructure. This has impacted our level of service that we can provide to our customers, and these are all compromised by a budget that doesn't account for an increase in annexations of areas and as we take on more infrastructure. So in our asset management program, we went out and benchmarked 18 different municipalities around the world in order to see where their level of service compared to ours. Here are a few examples, and in that benchmarking process, we discovered that all of them had a line item somewhere devoted to sustainability, and that could have been in design of some kind of design for infrastructure, a life cycle assessment, ecosystem services, or some kind of sustainability index. So this led us to believe that we needed to take a step towards sustainability as well. And so we had to decide on what framework we would then operate in. And we decided that the system in which we operate is the hydrologic cycle. We have here a series of diagrams showing what happens prior to development. You have a healthy ecosystem, and you have a hydrologic cycle that continues to work. In our recent past, what we have was the pipe-to-pit method, where impact of development would prevent water from infiltrating. And we have this bold vision of where we wanted to be, which is the hydrologic cycle with the sustainable development. And we're somewhere in the middle here between these two. We're moving away from this pipe-to-pit method and more towards infiltration, detention, and finding ways to capture rainwater rather than sending it away. However, we need tools in order to accomplish that. And so currently in our asset management plan, we're conducting what's called a business risk evaluation, and again, benchmarking our level of service, and we started a life cycle analysis of our assets. But coupled with that, we have to then start asking more questions about what are some of the ecosystem services that our assets provide, what are the natural capital that we're eating into, what kind of low impact and environmental site designs can we include in our land development code. These tools are informed by these actions that we're trying to take, and this is through one of our documents, our master plan, is asking us for stream stabilization, flood mitigation, storm sewer conduit replacement. These all feed up into documents that guide what we do. This is the not only our master plan, but the land development code that guides development in Austin, the plans that we have in other departments like a sustainability plan, a resiliency plan, and the current land development code rewrite called Code Next. These are all guiding documents which we are held accountable. And finally, we established principles of sustainability, and this is what gets us to this bold vision of mimicking the hydrologic cycle with our natural and built infrastructure. And so that's preparing our city for resiliency to climate change, reducing the infrastructure impacts, restoring environmental integrity of our waterways, and reducing dependency on potable water for non-potable use. And lastly, this idea of water and carbon neutrality, such that all our actions that we have in the city have a water and carbon net zero benefit. Here I've listed the partnerships that we need to either engage, enhance, or maintain in order to make this happen, because we can't do this alone. And I've cited local groups such as those other offices that are in the city, regional groups that we've benchmarked and that we are working with and relying upon in some cases for data. Some of the worldwide groups, some studies have been done outside the United States that give great feedback and provide calculators that you can use. And then lastly, those stakeholders within the city, especially businesses that we partner with to get work done, such as contractors. So the first thing to make sure that you have is that you're aware of where your infrastructure is and what it's doing. And here you have a map of showing storm drain conduit and the inlets, as well as the ponds that they lead to, the open space around those ponds, and finally the floodplains that you can see, and the tree canopy. You want to make sure you have your inventory well assembled and in some kind of GIS, so you can collect the data and then input it into a format that's usable and it is applicable to where you live. The first thing that we have undertaken is a life cycle analysis of our assets, such that we are understanding what are the costs associated with the design, with the sourcing of the materials, with the transportation of those materials to the construction sites. What happens at the construction sites? What are the costs that you have there? When we take on the asset, what are our O&M costs? What does it cost us to do repair and renewal? After a flood, how much does it cost us to pick it up and remove it? And then finally, at the end of the asset's life, what does it cost us to dispose? But we need to do more. We can't just do what's called the traditional life cycle analysis. We need to do what's called an assessment, which is where you add in more than just those costs. You also look at the greenhouse gas output at all these actions, the carbon footprint, the oil miles. You need to do more than that. And so all of these places that I've listed, there are stakeholders at each one of these locations that you can get information from. This is where you can get those costs, you can get those concerns, you can get those hours spent doing these things and figure out how much it really is costing, as well as the benefits, what's happening at these locations that allow you to calculate benefits that you receive from the asset. So this is a growing knowledge base. There are many studies out there and the literature is growing, and other municipalities are doing this as well. So you're in the right place. And we're trying to provide to you what we've done so that you don't have to go through all of the research. The thing to know is that not everything out there is going to be beneficial. You're going to have some things that have hard impact, and you're going to have to rationalize those, knowing that sometimes things have a large carbon footprint, but maybe that's the only option out there, while other things have a really low carbon footprint and they provide great benefit. So what we need to consider is we know how economic transactions happen in the city, taxes, incomes, those transactions that happen day to day, and you can calculate those. You can come up with the economic health of the city. But what we don't know is the economic health of our environment. How can we calculate the benefit of living by a river and the recreational activities that you get out of those? These all have an economic component. This river, riparian areas, etc., have a biological benefit too. And the tree canopy and the lake also provide an air conditioning benefit. They decrease the ambient temperature around them. So these all need to have that cost associated with them. So it's not just the benefits, it's not just the cost that you have from your infrastructure, it's also the benefits that you can receive from these things. So this is a very easy example that you can take off the shelf. It's the FEMA calculator. I took their calculations of acres per year that you receive from the benefit of open space and a riparian area. And I applied this just to the areas that we have our stormwater controls that are ponds and vegetative filter strips. And I also applied it to the open space that we own as a city, and that's in the city in its entirety, as well as the riparian areas that we own as a city and that are in the city jurisdiction. And just as an example, our ponds alone can provide some odd $12 million of benefit a year that's not being calculated, and that needs to be brought forward. The same is true of our open space and our riparian areas too. This wasn't very hard to calculate, and I just had our GIS calculate the area, and then I plugged it into an Excel spreadsheet. It's not hard to do, it's quite attainable. So we're able to do this with our GIS. We know at each of these locations the age, the size, and the storm conveyance that these assets can provide. But what we're not aware of is what our natural infrastructure provides. We need to be able to say at these locations, this is what the tree canopy is able to do, this is what our creeks are able to provide, this is what our rain gardens can do, these are what our ponds can do. We have to start incorporating this into our GIS. So in the GIS, we want to be able to say, from the smallest site, private site development, how does water then move across the land from cisterns to rain gardens, into our creeks, into our storm drain, to finally ponds, and then our larger receiving bodies of water. Because then this then informs back into our data management system. How are these things operating? Do we have the right measure in the right place? And this then informs our asset management program. It helps us drive decision making. Do we need to reconsider the volume of the storm, the measure that we put in place, the volume it needs to capture? So from there, you want to then look at the infrastructure that you have, find out how it's doing, and make sure that what it's doing is then informing your land development code so that the right places, the right measure is put in the right place, and that it's also driving your policy. Because this is what's going to keep you in alignment towards the three pillars that we've been discussing in terms of sustainability, the social aspects, the environment, and the economics. And it's an iterative process. As you maintain this, you want to then make sure that you're doing the right thing in the right place at the right time for the right amount of lifespan, and so that the land development code can be improved over time, and also driving the policies, the climate plan, your sustainability plan. That these are all informational. It goes both ways. The database that you're building is this connection of data streams, and what you have to do as a municipality is determine where you are. This is this benchmarking exercise, and then you need to think about what's a point of concern that you know that something's wrong before you get to a threshold where change happens faster than you can accommodate. Because as you go forward, you want to make sure that the measures you put in place are moving away from that threshold, not taking you towards it. So that you can show over time the change, this is where we were, this is where we want to be, and that the measures you're putting into place are slowly and incrementally moving you further away from that threshold. Because the public's going to want to see, as time goes on, what it was that you had, the water cycle, and how it was impeded by your traditional design of your streetscapes and your water and your stormwater infrastructure, to something that's more amenable to infiltrating water, and a streetscape that's much more desirable. And you can also demonstrate internally, externally, the carbon footprint that you have, the nutrients and the cycling of vegetation back into the ground, and the ecosystem services that you provide, and then the water footprint that you have. And this needs to be disseminated, it needs to be broadcasted out, it needs to be shown both internally and externally so that the public can be aware of what you're doing. And this is all about knowledge building and dissemination, because this is a difficult task to undertake. You've been building your infrastructure for over 100 years. It's going to take a while to get all this information back out of it. But whatever you come up against, it's going to be challenging, but don't worry about it, because this is important. This is going to help you know that you should probably be making what decisions you should be making now, so that you don't burden yourself with decisions in the future that you can't fix. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention today.